What happens when you gather the UK's boldest legal minds on a sun-drenched retreat in Ibiza and press record? Welcome to the Lawyers Retreat miniseries, a special edition of the Legally Speaking podcast sponsored by Clio. We've partnered with the visionaries behind the Lawyers Retreat, the wonderful Burt and Kirsty Pappin, to bring you real, unfiltered conversations from Cala Carbo, where strategy, succession and scaling and sunshine meet. This isn't your average CPD. It's leadership with a view, innovation with a cocktail, and well-being with purpose. You'll hear from trailblazers rethinking the legal playbook with episodes recorded poolside, mic hike, and even post-yoga. 2025 is our year of 10xing the show. This mini-series is just the beginning, so let's get into it. Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast, filmed live here in Ibiza. Name, title, and organisation.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. So my name's Nadine Stanton. I'm the chief exec of a company called Professional Training. Professional Training train only law firms all over the world on what we call essential skills. So not soft skills, essential skills. So basically everything but the law. So how to have a difficult conversation, leadership, negotiation, all the stuff around being a lawyer rather than the job, the section 1, 2, 3, subsection 4, 5, 6. So that's what we do.
There we go. Lovely, concise, and to the point. Love it.
Thank you.
What have you most enjoyed about the Lawyers Retreat thus far?
I think what I've enjoyed is that pattern interrupts, that ability to be away from the desk and the normal day-to-day, interacting with other business owners and starting to think around strategy. And although I'd come here initially to network with other law firms, how much I've taken away myself has been incredible. And there's been some incredible speakers. So just enjoyed the whole stepping away, I think, stepping off the platform, if you like.
Yeah, I sort of like unplug for today to plug in for tomorrow. It's an initiative we talk about, particularly on the GBLO as well, which the Legal Speaking podcast does with Hive Risk. Okay, so let's use a practical example for some of our listeners and viewers to take away. There's a client, you need to have a very difficult conversation about collection of fees. Yeah. They're perhaps late paying an invoice, or for whatever reason you don't know, but you need to have a difficult conversation. How should you, as a law firm, approach that potentially difficult conversation? Break it down for us.
Yeah, I think in terms of when they're late paying for fees, there's all sorts of different tactics to use, but a really nice tactic is to say, actually, I don't really want to be having this conversation with you. But if you put yourself in my shoes, obviously we are a business. It has come to this. We've asked you 3 times for payment on this. It's really important because I know obviously there are things going on, but it would be really helpful. And that's why we're having this conversation. And also saying things like, I know you'll appreciate you being honest with me, I think can make a really big difference. But I think paring that back, it isn't necessarily getting to a point in a law firm where you've got to have that conversation where they've not paid you. It's the managing the expectations and managing that journey so it doesn't get to that point. And that's some of the courses that we put people on are to actually make sure that it doesn't get to that point where, you're several weeks in, a client's not paid you, etc. So I think there's all sorts of different ways to do it, but I think it's about the frame and the lens of which you put that conversation in. But also sometimes rather than going to a client and saying, you haven't paid, it's less that they're less defensive when you say, do you want to talk to me about what's going on and perhaps why we haven't received payment? So again, different client, different situation. So it's about building a toolkit, actually, a psychological toolkit of how you would approach that client. So without knowing the scenarios, without knowing the client and without knowing the situation, those are just a few things to think about. Well, it's a really good question. Thanks, Rob.
I love the way you approach that. Is rather than sort of blaming, shaming, you're saying like, let's collaborate, empathize, and come from a place of understanding to try and work with them to get to the solution. Yeah. And I think that's a great way to also continue to keep that client relationship rather than potentially burn any bridges.
I think that's a really good point, actually. So it's the commercial perspective. So yes, okay, you could go heavy-handed about getting the money out of a client, but it's that wider perspective of, do you want to continue to work with that client and the commercial kind of realities of it, which are, and preserving that relationship. And I think most of the time, not all the time, again, it depends on the scenario, but can be really important.
Yeah, no, completely agree. What are the top 3 essential skills? You kind of explained earlier difference between sort of essential and soft and various other skills, but like for a modern lawyer in 2025, what are the top 3, would you say, essential skills that people should have in their toolbox, but also be continually working on, because skills need sharpening and kind of improving as time by time?
Okay, so we have a mantra. So it's IQ, intellectual ability or quotient, versus EQ. So it's about how to win, how to wow, and how to retain clients. So it's the skill of how to win business. So how to effectively network and win work and bring that in is absolutely key skill for a modern lawyer 2025, because you've got to eventually become the lawyer who wins the work that lands on the desk as opposed to doing the work that lands on the desk. I think the retention piece is about the client service. How do you make clients feel cared for, attended, important? So that client service piece is really good. The wow piece of it is that how do you manage those expectations so that a client raves about you, refers you, wants to come back, and you become that kind of go-to for everything legal. And so win, wow, retain, all of those go back to those are the key skills. It, again, to stand out makes you a differentiator. Intelligence isn't the differentiator because everybody's bright. It's what makes you or your firm the edge. It's the marginal gain. What makes you the lawyer that I'll just go back to? So that was a really good question.
A really good answer. Win, wow, retain. Love it. And that's a great way to probably pull this to a bit of a close. But before we close, why would you encourage people to come to initiatives such as the Lawyers Retreat? Maybe people listening to this are busy. They don't think they can justify the time, the energy, the effort. What would you say to people that perhaps just not in that mindset?
These are all really good reasons why you wouldn't go. You're busy, you haven't got the time, you've got so many other priorities. But actually, to make the boat row faster, if you take 2 or 3 days away to think about the overall, helicopter strategy, that will help you prioritize on the day-to-day. So actually, overall, it's a win in terms of your time, because you've paused, you've stopped, and you're thinking about what's working, what's not, what you're going to do differently. So I think it's easy to say no. And actually, I probably was in that camp myself of like, I don't know if I can justify that amount of time.
Yeah.
I'm really glad I came.
Good. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Legally Speaking podcast. If people want to know more about you or indeed your organisation, where can they go? Feel free to share any websites, any social media handles. We'll also share them this episode for you too.
Brilliant. So if you do want to visit our website, www.professional-training.co.uk, have a look at us there. I'm on LinkedIn quite regularly, so do have a look at us there. But as I said, we've got our team are all over the world.
There we go. Well, just leaves me to say thanks so much once again for joining me live here in a yoga studio in Cala Carbo in Ibiza. But for now, from all of us, over and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.